Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 42nd Stately Office Hours. This is where us, the team at Stately, get your feedback, talk to you about what we've been working on this week with Stately and on XState. And yeah, we're finally back after a week off. We're going to tell you a little bit more about that later. If you want to join us, you can ask us comments live from YouTube. We're also streaming on Twitter and on LinkedIn as well. If you have any questions you want to ask us throughout, you can also join our Discord, which is, she says, scrolling. We've got so many banners nowadays. Oh, not that one. That was a weird glitch with StreamYard. Discord.gg/xstate. And we have a dedicated office hours channel in there. If you tweet us, if you send us a message on YouTube, if you send us a message on Discord, I have all of these windows in front of me right now, so I should be able to find you. Now, before further ado, there's a face you haven't seen yet here today, and so I'm very excited to introduce her. So we'll just do our quick intros going around the team first. I'll start off. I'm Laura, and I do developer and designer relations for Stately. David, you're next in my little viewer.
Yeah, I'm David. The glitch was my fault, by the way. I wanted to highlight this over here. And I am the founder of Stately, the creator of XState, and I think fully recovered from jet lag, hopefully.
Excellent. Farzad, how's your jet lag?
Hey, I'm Farzad. I'm the Steve Wozniak of Stately. And yeah, I just do all sorts of engineering stuff in the Stately. And about the jet lag, it was pretty terrible. Like it was a 1 hour long flight. So, you can imagine.
And Kevin, who are you and how's your jet lag?
Yep, I'm Kevin, and jet lag was actually pretty easy this time. On the way over to Europe, I had no sleep, and then on the way back, I had no sleep. So
consistent.
Nothing to complain about. And engineering at Stately, so having a great time.
And last but absolutely not least, you might not know her yet unless you've met her at a conference representing Stately, which she's often at. It's Jenny, and Jenny is often unseen, but you should know that she is the glue behind the Stately team. Jenny, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny. I am Chief Happiness Officer at Stately, and I also do Head of Operations. So nice to be here.
It's so nice to finally have you on, and we are going to be making sure we get you on as often as possible because we love having you around. And it's nice for everyone to see you because we see you all the time in the Stately Discord, and we very rarely get to show you off on office hours. So let's start with Jenny. What were we up to last week? Why weren't we here? In case anyone didn't see a photo on Twitter, photos on Twitter.
So last week, our whole team was on a retreat in Copenhagen, and we had a whole week long of activities. It was very long days, but it was so much fun. We had a recap on one of the days where we just went through the last quarter, and we went through the different things that we've accomplished and some challenges that we faced, and then we planned out our next sprint cycle next quarter. And then the next day, we had a connection day where we learned how to communicate with one another, because I think it's really important that we have that type of human connection outside of work-related activities. And then we did really fun things like a cooking class together. We learned how to fillet a fish. That was really fun. And after that, we did a couple activities such as escape rooms. This was my first time doing an outdoor escape room. I'm not sure if you've all done anything like that, but it was really interesting, and it had a really fun storyline of the history of Denmark, not just Copenhagen, but all of Denmark. And then on our last day in Copenhagen, we decided to venture outside of the big city and went to Billund, which is where Legoland is. So that was a great time.
And Lego House.
It was so much fun.
Finally built this thing. This is where we were at.
Oh, wow, you built it already.
Yeah. I had to. This was one of the coolest things, in my opinion, that we did, just seeing the Lego house and building things. We took lots of pictures, so it's a great time. And the entire trip was just a fantastic experience. And I think the team was really happy to finally meet each other especially some of us have been here for over a year now. So it's a great experience. And
Yeah, it
we
was the
thank
first
Jenny.
time.
Yeah, we thank Jenny for doing all of the hard planning. She's been planning this for many months. So yeah.
Yeah, and we had a couple of false starts as well with retreat planning that didn't go ahead because of COVID. So it was really nice for us to all meet finally in person. And I finally met everyone, and I'd not met anyone before. And what was really nice is that we all get on really well. And I feel like we kind of did already, but this was just a whole other level, being able to get to know each other better, being able to talk to each other about what we appreciate about each other's work. That was a really special time that we had there. I really enjoyed it. It was great. So thank you, Jenny. Thank you for being you, and thank you for the retreat. It was amazing. And we have got up and going really quickly after we're back. Everyone was so excited to get back on their computers because the laptops were mostly put away during the retreat. And so, David, do you want to start off by demoing some of what we've got? Something's already in production and something that is ready for release soon.
Yeah, so some of you might have noticed a recent addition lately, or not an addition, but a change. And specifically, it's for these edges over here. So now instead of being like really squiggly or curvy or whatever you want to call them, we have a brand new edge drawing algorithm, which we're still working on improving. But this one actually tries to find the, I guess you could call it the nicest or the best path from one state to another, depending on where the edge label is. So you're no longer going to see a lot of bends and unnecessary noise in there, but instead you're going to see it's sort of a shortest path algorithm. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but it is also very tweakable. So this is just a demo state machine where actually, I meant to post this a while ago. I have a state machine for should you use effect, and it's basically like a giant flowchart that lets you choose what you should use. But yeah, I just thought that this was a great way to demo these paths, because actually when I made this before, the paths were so curvy and all over the place. I was like, I don't want to, really share this. But now it's shareable. Yeah, so this is the new path drawing algorithm, and so please try it out. If you have any comments, I know that Eric in the chat has already gave some suggestions for things to improve, and we thank you for that. Please let us know, what do you think of this? Are there any other improvements that we could make? So yeah, another feature that is coming up, but not in production yet, but we've been talking about it this week. You might notice over here, while I was making this sort of flowchart guide, I wanted to put markdown in here. And so you could see these markdown links, which I never seem to get right, but regardless, it's not even working in here yet. And it would be really cool to just have markdown display as markdown. So in the future, I don't know if you could see the difference here. This is our development build. You could see that we are actually rendering markdown. So in the future, you are going to be able to, and let me just, zoom in here. Or actually I can't zoom in, but now you could, do things such as like have a heading, some paragraph text, maybe a quote, or a list of items like this. Or you could even add images. And I don't have a good example of an image, but yeah, you could just imagine that there's an image right there. So
Yay. That looks so cool. And weirdly enough, this morning I added to the feature request on Canny for markdown descriptions because I found a use case for it, because I was making a machine that was showing examples of what all the different elements in the editor do. And I was like, it'd be really useful to have bold text in here, just in my description, so that I could highlight, initial state or something like that. The StreamYard branding.
It was the closest thing I could find.
Oh, but it works. It looks great, especially with the transparency on the background there.
Yeah,
so I will be using this as soon as it gets released.
Mm-hmm. David, what are the set of features from Markdown that we support right now?
So right now we will support just basically everything you see here. And we're using just behind the scenes a component called React Markdown. So you could just customize any component in there. And so one of the great things about the way that we've structured how we're creating this diagram is this is just a foreign object. So this is going to render HTML normally. Of course, this causes some problems in Safari, which we eventually have to figure out because Safari support is definitely in demand. But yeah, so when we get to things like expanding and collapsing those detail or summary views, we could pretty easily support that too. It's just a matter of styling them. And in the future, like distant future, we're talking probably next year, we've also been talking about custom views. So you could think of a markdown view as just one possible view. Another view might be you want to link this to a Figma prototype or embed an iframe or something like that. But I think that a great quick win for now is having this markdown view inside both the state nodes and maybe even the descriptions for each of the transitions. Because then in the future, you should be able to maybe drag and drop an image or even edit the description in line over here. And then it feels like a really powerful diagramming tool, which also this outputs to code as well. So if you were to export this, I have to sign in. If you were to export this, then you're going to be able to see this as a description, hopefully. So if we go to the viz, out. If this doesn't work, it means I'm still working on it. So pardon my, yeah, so you see we still have the full description in there, you know, and I do believe that we already have Markdown support, sort of. So yeah, you can see we sort of have Markdown support already in here, just not styling, and our little StreamYard duck is cut off over here. But yeah, there it is. You can see that the Markdown descriptions are preserved and will live in your code.
And that answers Cedric's question about whether it will be set into the code. Cedric also asks, will it work with the VS Code extension?
Yes, it should be able to work with the VS Code extension. Right now in XState, you could set a description, and that's just a string. And so that string can now contain Markdown. And I mean, you could have always put whatever you want to put in there. But the idea is that in the future, the Stately editor within the VS Code extension will render that Markdown as expected.
It is so cool. We have lots of very positive feedback for that. Huda Sale says coupling with TL Draw version 2, and this will be perfect. Carlos, loving it, +1. Eric said images, too cool. Martin thinks it's incredible. And Eric
Awesome.
did point out the links to Figma UI designs would be so useful as well.
That'd be great. And there's, by the way, there's Judy Kyle. There are so many future ideas that we've been talking about with TL Draw. Just having this as a layer on top, like we'll save that for later. Lots of exciting.
Don't get too much; they'll all get overexcited.
Yeah.
And so next up, Kevin, would you like to share a little bit about what you've been working on this week?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, this is the first time I get to demo something, and so maybe I'm wondering what am I working on? Well, I'm working on a lot of things, and this is a little window into that. So if I can share my screen, 1 second. So there are basically two features that I've been working on, and they're kind of related. The first one is link sharing. And the second one is the ability to turn machines and systems to sort of like private, so they're not publicly available in the registry. So let me just kind of walk you through some of those, and then we can talk about that. Okay. So let's say that you're in a machine here. You'll see that there is a share button. This used to actually be a feature that was kind of nested in this menu here, but now we've kind of promoted it. And you're getting a modal here, and of course you can copy the link, and you can go and just paste that link, and you can share that. But that actually works kind of in coordination with this other feature, which is the ability to make things private. Now, this is actually a feature that we're sort of softly rolling out only to certain users right now. So you'll get to see that, and it has implications on how we provide features for teams, which is a feature that we talked about last time. So you'll see that there's also this toggle where you can basically unpublish something from the registry. Oops, sorry. And that basically means that it won't be discoverable, and now it's private, but you can still share the link to it to intended recipients. And then we basically explain that down here in the text. So from, one other thing is, let's see, if you go back out here to the Discover, you'll see that, for example, if I were to just try to share someone else's machine, then we don't have those options, and that's the same thing, because somebody else owns that machine. So from a feature perspective, like I said, this has a lot of implications on the amount of control over visibility that we're going to be providing people, not only in terms of other users on the registry, but also members of the team. And from a coding perspective, this was just really fun to work on because under the hood, it actually does use some of these sort of custom machine hooks that I recently wrote about in a blog post that we launched this week. So that modal, for example, has everything from a toggle machine to debouncing to optimistic UI and just the visibility of the modal itself, all of these. And in future blog posts, I really want to kind of explain how we can create all these small custom hooks and put them together to build more useful, larger features. So that's it.
Yeah, it's also exciting. And when do we think this will be released? It's not sort of a next week, next couple of weeks situation, is it?
No, it's really part of, so it actually looks like small features, but actually is something that touches, the entire system and the entire stack of our technology. And so we have to sort of coordinate all of that and roll that out together. So that's something that will take a little time to do.
Yeah. Oh, but it looks so useful, and lots of people have been asking for the ability to make their machines private. So I think it will be very valuable for all those people. Cedric asks, with the private registry, does this mean that the XState layout comment will be removed?
So that's actually a separate feature that we've been talking about. And so what we're thinking about doing there is just moving it to a separate config file rather than living directly in there, just because we know that string can get really long. And there is also potential to we've been talking about having a Git integration. And so what this means is that your layout information can not only be saved within your local Git repositories, but could also be saved within Stately itself, so that anyone who wants to basically view your machine, like maybe in a web browser or in the comfort of their own VS Code extension, will be able to see the layouts just as you have set it up. We're thinking about ideas right now. Just think of that layout string as a temporary solution right now.
I think this is a good point for us to tell folks, if you have any feature requests or any use cases on any of these features, they're all listed in our Canny roadmap, which is basically a space where you can make feature requests, vote on existing feature requests. You can find out what we've got planned, what's in progress, what we've completed. There's a few on there already. And so if you go to statelyai.canny.io, you'll be able to find our roadmap there and be able to request features. And of course, you can use all of the usual channels, the social media and things like that, to talk to us about features as well. We'll try to direct you towards Canny if we think it's something that you can vote on, because that helps us know everyone wants to use something that we're building.
Yeah. Speaking of features, you could also put improvements in there too. And Farzad just recently asked me to share something that he's been working on as well. So I'll just show it quickly. And this is just a small quality of life improvements where previously, no matter what the state of these panels were, they would just open when you reopen the editor. But now when you collapse them and you hard refresh, they stay closed. So we persist the state of the panels. This also works whether you're logged in or logged out, and it works on the VS Code extension too. So that's just an example of a quality of life improvement we're making. And we ask you, please, it's not a bother. Just let us know of any small improvements that you would like us to make, because there's always room for us to fit those in.
Yeah, and chances are we've been asking each other for them already.
Mhm.
Valentin asks, David, how is XState v5 coming along?
Great question. So one of the biggest things we're working on, and I've been talking to Mateusz, who is on vacation this week, but I've been talking to him last week, is I've been preparing a big PR, which is probably one of the biggest changes. In V5 itself, it's more of a refactor, but it is a major change from the approach of V4 in that you will be able to interpret I want to say everything, but just any behavior. And just for reference, a behavior in V5 is it's a combination of a transition function and an initial state. It's basically how some actor behaves. So a state machine is just one possible behavior of an actor. And the really innovative thing in V5 is that you could define behaviors in many different ways, and developers are used to defining behaviors um, not usually as state machines, but sometimes as other things too, such as promises or just callbacks or even just plain reducers. And so we want to give developers that the same power of the XState tools without necessarily having to go full state machine or state chart. They could just start with a promise or a reducer, and all of those should work with XState, all the same. So this is also going to open doors to just to having support for other state management frameworks, or even if you're not using any state management library, then you could still use the tools exactly the same. Of course, you're going to get first class support if you use XState with all those extra visualizations. This is all to say one of our biggest projects in V5 is just abstracting that behavior aspect so that a state machine just becomes one of many possible behaviors that you could use. So that's how V5 is coming. We have a lot of other things, and Mateusz, when he gets back from vacation, will be able to talk about it a lot more in next week's office hours.
We'll remember to nudge him on it then. Cedric asks, the focus mode is in review. Do you think a demo is possible? It's a little bit optimistic, Cedric, isn't it? Because it's in review as we're in the planning stages of focus mode right now, aren't we, David?
Yes, it's something that we definitely want to do. People have been asking for it a lot, but there is initially the design part of it. We want to make sure that we nail the design of it so that we're exposing the right amount of information without obscuring information that might be necessary, even when you are focusing on only a specific state. So yeah, we are working on it. That's probably going to be a future priority, but not a priority right now. But yeah, just please give us your thoughts, your use cases, what kinds of features you would want in focus mode, and let us know in the Canny board.
Yeah, and a reminder, the Canny board is at statelyai.canny.io. So this week, we asked everyone a question in our Discord, on our LinkedIn, on our Twitter, and that was, what would make state machines easier to use for you and your team? This question was Anders' idea, but he's on holiday. So hi, Anders, when you watch this back, thank you for the great question. We've had a lot of feedback from it. And so one of the ideas behind this is thinking about how we can introduce people when they first come to the editor or when they first come to the docs. And if they're completely new to state machines, or if you want to help a member of your team get on board, we want to make it easier for you to do so. So one of the first requests we had was just being able to paste existing machines into the editor for collaboration. And this is an example of one of the feature requests. We've actually already got something very similar on Canny, and that is to import machines from the registry to your own code base. And so I think that this is definitely something we've got planned, isn't it, David?
Yes, this is something we definitely want to do. The one tricky part is that a machine or a visualization of a machine that you would create in XState Viz could potentially be many machines. So when you're importing something from XState Viz, it's not just one machine, but we have to consider the entire what we call a system. We might change that term in the future, but it's a collection of machines that are all related to each other. But yeah, should be pretty straightforward to do.
So if you're also interested in that feature, let us know, comment on that Canny post, and let us know what your use cases are, because that will really help us design something that works for everyone as much as we can. The other thing, the further responses we had to the question of what would make state machines easier, Freddie says, I say easing up the learning curve. I now grasp the concept of services, guards, and actions, but this is not common and takes some effort and time. I remember a POC Matt done a while ago where it was very functional and felt more natural to pick up. And I'm really hoping that that was the beta docs that we're doing that he saw Matt demo, because they'll be out soon. We're just working on polishing them up and making sure we've not missed anything out at the moment. But easing the learning curve is a big priority for all of us, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is actually a combination of many goals that we have. First of all is the documentation. And right now, Laura herself, she's working on a low-code or no-code guide to just state charts. And so these are going to be guides that are going to be displayed as a standalone guide and also within the editor. And so the goal of this is just to give you a nice, gentle intro to what do all of these symbols mean? And I mean, there's not too much to learn. You could get up and running with just states and transitions, and that's it. And then once your use cases get more complex, you're going to try to reach out for something and be like, there's got to be an easier way to do this. And that's when we could introduce things like nested states and parallel states and invocations and things like that. Also, for V5, like I said, and Angelo said that, he loves this philosophy, but state machines are just one of many possible behaviors. So we want our tools to be used in a way where a developer can code the way that they naturally code first. And then they could see, okay, this could actually be made easier with state machines and state charts once my logic gets more complex. So they don't have to dive into the deep end immediately, but instead, we want to make both the development experience and the learning experience more gradual.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, the panting creature in the background, you might be able to pick it up on the microphone. Oscar, the dog, is very excited about state charts and and us improving the learning curve too. Similarly to what Freddie said, Johan said, show the people how to design an app for XState use. How do I find states, establish a naming convention? How do I best use XState visual possibilities for the app design process? Not concepts first, but app design skills first. And this kind of reminds me of, Kevin, some of the blog posts that you've been working on where you've been looking at introducing these concepts into how you might already be addressing state in React apps.
Yeah, Laura, I think it can be somewhat intimidating to take an existing app that works, that you built, and then to say, well, how would I redesign this entire thing, how would I support all the different cases and stuff like that. So it's much easier to kind of focus on something small, get used to it, and then, like I said, maybe put them together, compose them, build them up. But you're already then starting to think about, oh, I see how this sort of concepts apply to what I would normally do, and then you'll sort of find the places that feel natural to migrate or to work on without having to throw out everything you've done.
Yes, so this is definitely a big part of what we're working on in the advocacy side, is the education and how we can show you as many different ways as possible to understand how to build apps with XState and with the Stately Studio as well. No Brainer on our Discord said, the biggest pains I've heard from my team are the concepts are hard to understand. I believe the new docs are going to mostly address this though. I've been trying to get people to read them, but it's always an issue getting people to read documentation, and we're very much bearing that in mind. And the machine schematic object, first argument to create machine, can be quite verbose and hard to understand, especially with the multiple shorthands and ways of doing things. The visual editor definitely helps with this, but when reviewing PRs and the like, it can be a struggle. I've also been creating and starting to enforce an XState style guide to address the multiple ways of doing things. For one, I'd love to see this style guide. But David, what do you think about the verbosity of the create machine element?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, this is something common that, and what's interesting is that even though it is such an awkward way of defining a context, the alternatives are not exactly better, especially with TypeScript support. Like having things in one giant object is really the best we could get, because if you do things in like a builder API or something like that, then you can't have looping back, like referring to states that don't exist yet. And so that's why an object is superior there. But again, it is very awkward to code against. And when you see that big object, you think, this looks machine generated. This doesn't look developer generated. And that's exactly the purpose of the editor. Honestly, like maybe I'm biased, but creating these machines in the visual editor is actually a nicer experience than even coding them, because all of the implementation details I could put in those little slots, whether they're actions or invocations, and the transitions between states, I could just drag and drop and do it in seconds instead of taking minutes or hours to do that. So yeah, that's the ultimate goal of the Stately editor, to get to feature parity with XState, so you don't have to hand code that large object by itself. Yeah, like we said, the visual editor does help with it. Also, he said when reviewing PRs, it can be a struggle. And so we've also been talking about a Git integration, where whenever someone makes a pull request and they have a machine in there, just think of it as a Stately bot should be able to detect that and show you, here's a visualization of the machine. You could link right to the editor and open it in a web browser or in your VS Code extension, visualize that machine, and maybe even include a visual image of that machine with potentially a diff from the previous machine to what's changed within the machine. So there's a lot of exciting ideas that we have for the GitHub integration.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people say that the GitHub integration would be a fantastic feature for them as well. I think it would be a really great way to be able to slowly introduce the editor and XState into teams as well, because if they see it and they see that visualization, they're going to want to use it as well, aren't they? Fraser says, I think we're still lacking advice, guidance, examples for orchestrating state charts together in an actor system. So this is going back to a similar point of understanding how to build these with apps. It's one of the most common questions I see in modeling help, which is the channel in our Discord, how to go from a single machine to a bigger system. The actor model provides building blocks, but on its own, it's not enough to say, use the actor model. There's questions about how actors should communicate, parent, child to siblings, anywhere in the actor tree, how to decide how to split between different actors, and lots more. We want to be thinking at a higher level of abstraction than the actor model, with patterns of orchestration that people can take and apply to their apps, rather than having to develop bespoke systems each time. And I don't know what you think about that, David.
Yeah, no, these are very valid things. In fact, version 3 didn't even really have the actor model in mind, and it was sort of only introduced in version 4. And that's why, like, with each successive, iteration of like major versions that we have in XState, we think of, important foundational things that in the current version might feel tacked on. And the actor model is definitely, victim to that in V4. But in V5, we're starting from the ground up saying, hey, the actor model is very important and we should focus on that as a first-class citizen. So I agree, and that's me saying that it is sort of our faults or my faults for not providing full guidance on like how to make more complex systems, using the actor model. And there's a few missing parts too. And this is why we, of course, have the RFCs. And in one of our RFCs, we talk about systems and the receptionist pattern. And so this is something that's present in other actor model systems like akka, which is probably the most popular actor model implementation in the wild. And we do want to have that in XState. So please leave your comments there on what you think about that, because that's going to greatly simplify how actors communicate between each other. We're also working on building better tooling for visualizing how actors talk to each other. I remember Farzad, who disappeared here. I don't see him, but
he head off to sort out something with his family.
Oh, okay. But he was talking about how the communication between the inspector and a live running machine, like there's a lot of events being passed and forth between those windows, and it would be great to visualize that in a sequence diagram. And so that's just one example of the many tools that we want to build for visualizing communication between actors. And I think that those tools are really going to help make more sense of the actor model and how they should be used in more complex applications. And of course, we do want to add more examples too. We're slowly working on that, just getting the big features out first. But yeah, I'll personally find time to add more examples, and I'm sure other people on the team will follow suit and do that too.
Oh yeah, Kevin's got some ideas for that. I'm not going to push you on that right now, Kevin, but we definitely have discussed it. And yeah, there's loads of ideas in the team for examples. So we just have to get around to start making them as well. Just one point to Shevek, who asked, is this live or recorded? We didn't respond to your comment right away. That wasn't because there's a delay in the record or something. It's just because we had lots of other stuff to talk about. But we are 100% live, and that is why you have a dog panting in the background and interrupting the stream. Oh, and a fly now as well. Excellent. This is all going on in my house here. Angelo says, it would be great to maybe have a use case example for the actor RFC. I struggle with conceptuals after a point.
Yeah, definitely. One big example that's been floating around in my mind is a shopping cart app, because there is no straightforward hierarchy. Like obviously you have your items, your products, and then each individual product, and each individual product, you could do things like add to cart or whatever, but where does the cart live? It doesn't live within each of the products. It lives in some sort of outside thing, and things need to communicate directly with that cart actor to say, hey, I'm adding this to the cart, or I'm removing it from the cart, or I'm checking the stock asynchronously, and I might need to remove it from the cart if the stock comes back empty. So yeah, that would probably be a good example for this. So trust me, we will make examples. I'm a very example-driven developer. When I read documentation, I will admit I scroll right to the examples. I'm like, just show me how it's used. And if I need to get more in depth, then I'll read the documentation a bit further. So yeah, examples are important.
Absolutely. Andrew says they need a storybook for Stately Editor, and maybe even PNG nested files.
Yeah. Hey, those are all very good features or feature requests, and some of those are actually in the Stately Canny board.
So that's a reminder: go to the Stately Canny board.
Yes, please. We want your feedback.
So this has been an absolutely jam-packed, demo-packed office hours. Does anyone have anything else that they wanted to share this week, team, or anyone in the comments have any other questions that you wanted to ask us this week?
I want to ask real quick, Jenny, how's the survey going?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up at the end, and I wanted you all to know that we're really grateful, we're really thankful for all the feedback that we're getting on the survey responses. We've hit over 160 responses in the last couple weeks, and next week I'm planning on starting to contact a handful of people just to thank them and then see if they're interested in connecting to chat.
Great. And there's stickers in that for folks who do?
Of course. Yeah, there they are.
I could also make a suggestion, so some people who are watching, if you want to share out the survey with your coworkers, for example, it's worth dropping it in the company Slack or whatever you're using, because even if it goes to people who are not actually using the tools as much as you are, then we can hear about that and kind of understand where they are too.
Yeah. And again, the purpose of the survey is we want you to give us feedback on what tools and features are going to be most important for your team. Not as a nice to have, but as in I really wish that we had this tool, and currently wish that, we could get this tool to make our teams more productive, help us ship code faster, and understand our application logic. So yeah, this is why the survey is really important, so that we're not creating these tools in a vacuum.
And trust us, every single response we're paying close attention to it. Like even yesterday, David was adding in feature requests from the survey responses into Canny to make sure that we had a record of them and that we were prioritizing them. So we're really listening to everything that you say to us. Fantastic. And that is at stately.ai/survey. So you just head over there to fill out the survey. And it's only 5 minutes, if that, isn't it, Jenny?
Maybe less. It just depends on how much you really want to tell us.
So if you want to spend more time and tell us more, we'd really appreciate that too. Cedric says there's lots of people who want to use XState right now at Luco, starting with small things about knowing how to.
Yeah, definitely examples. We're going to be providing more of those. And the thing too is that there's a lot of examples in the wild. And we've been trying to just curate them in one central place in the documentation. But I think having official examples, which Kevin was talking about a lot, would be even more helpful so that people could see what the best practices and patterns are.
Yeah, and we're looking at making templates as well so that you can just get started with it right away and you don't have to be copying anything over or writing anything yourself either. Valentin says, go back to your example, David, the shopping cart mini app is cool, but in a create React app context, never mind a Next.js one, having the URL updated by the state chart is tricky, as well as refreshing a URL and having the chart sync.
Yeah, so speaking of the survey, one of the most requested things there actually was a router, like just connecting a state chart to a router, just because they sort of map pretty nicely together. And especially when you're doing guided forms and things like that, you really want to connect it to a router so that the back buttons work, but you could still ensure that you don't get into any invalid states. So just having guards within states. And also, this is a commonly requested feature in our Canny board. This is like the 20th time we're talking about our Canny board, but it is really important. So I think, yeah, as far as open source, router is definitely top of mind. It is hugely requested. So we hear you.
Absolutely. Angela says examples. Oh, speaking of which, I was supposed to help with a React Native one. And that is a reminder that if you have any examples that you want to share with us, please let us know. We would love to include your examples. We'd love to share anything that you're working on and shout about it. If you're using the Stately Studio, or if you're using XState, we love to see it. We love to share it. Absolutely. Great. So anyone else have anything that they wanted to mention this week before we wrap up? I think at this point, the flies finally left the room and stopped bothering me. The dog has not yet. So on that note, we'll wrap up. We'll be back again with you same time next week. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We really appreciate you coming in with your comments and with your questions. You really make this stream everything great that it is. We'll see you again. Oh, yeah, Stately subscription. Just you wait and see. We love you all too, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.